All right, and I guess we could just get it kicked off. Make sure everybody's in here. But thanks again, guys, for joining today. Today we're going to be talking about B2B orders and Shopify Plus specifically. We've sort of done a little bit of digging on our customer base, and we're pretty sure that a good portion, just about a quarter of our customer base, does B2B to some capacity. We can't really confirm that for sure because we're relying on data that could be inaccurate or just relying on what sort of you guys tell our team. But with such a large portion of our customer base being focused on B2B or having some portion of their business in B2B, we felt it was necessary to sort of venture into the B2B space ourselves to support you guys and make sure that those orders come through just as they would from a B2C perspective, right? So we'll go through sort of what Webgility offers from a B2B perspective. We'll talk through Shopify Plus and what that offers from a B2B perspective, and David's going to demo the whole thing. So, just to introduce ourselves, as always, I am John May. I'm the engagement manager for Webgility. I am the voice and face, whether I like it or not, of the Webgility brand. And then I'm joined, as usual, by our lovely senior implementation specialist, David Pond. Say hi, David.
Hi, David.
Perfect. And for the agenda today, like I said, we're just going to go through the B2B orders from Shopify Plus, understanding what Shopify Plus is, how it works from a very basic general perspective, and then how WebGility sort of supports that. And then David's going to get into a demo of exactly how those features work within WebGility, what buttons to press, what exactly they do, and how they make your life easier. And then we'll end, as always, with that general Q&A. Just a couple housekeeping things. The Q&A is sort of just a dedicated time for Q&A, but you are more than welcome and actually encouraged to ask questions while we're having this conversation. We don't want this to, oh, thank you for letting me know the chat's disabled. I just noticed it. I forget that I have to do that every time. It doesn't let me just set it up automatically so that you guys can chat with each other. You should be able to chat now. That's my fault. Sorry. The Q&A section is now open, so you can type your questions and we'll answer them. If they are questions that don't directly to pertain what we're talking about in that moment, we might save them for a time where there's a break or save them for the very end of the Q&A. We will, however, try to get to everybody's questions, and generally we do a good job of answering them all. So if there are questions that we cannot answer, stuff that is directly related to your WebGility subscription, maybe technical support, billing support, stuff like that, we won't answer it live, but we'll get somebody to follow up with you. So feel free to still ask those questions. We'll just get with our team internally afterwards and have them reach out directly. All right, so I usually do sort of an opening sort of statement for what we're talking about for the week. This week, again, talking about Shopify B2B. I wanted to sort of set the stage with why we're even talking about B2B in the first place. I know I mentioned with our customer base having a large part of B2B sellers, that's sort of what sort of initiated the conversation for us. But it's important to look at how B2B is growing as a segment just in the overall e-commerce market as well. I've seen some figures tossed around here and there, some of them a little different than the others, but bottom line is that the B2B segment in e-commerce has grown. If you look at between 2020 and 2025, it's grown by like $20 trillion in value, and it's expected to hit a total market cap of 36 trillion, I think, by 2026. Even if that number is not exactly accurate, I think that just speaks to how fast B2B is growing. I think more and more businesses, with everything that's going on in the economy and tariffs and stuff like that, people are looking to be more agile, looking to be more holistic in the way that they do business. And I think B2B is a natural extension of that, right? You open up a lot more avenues when you're dealing with wholesalers or working with other businesses than you would just working with consumers. So very important to understand that B2B is growing, and that's why we're sort of continuing to take a look at how we can support B2B orders and make that flow easier, just like we do with B2C. Another part of that conversation is that just like B2C, you'll notice that consumers are looking for that fast and easy service, technology first platforms, things that make ordering and tracking and shipping as easy as possible. This also extends to B2B. Where consumers look for that, I think B2B is starting to look for that same functionality. In the past, B2B wasn't as built out, right? There wasn't as much functionality that was sort of catered directly towards business to business. And with that functionality coming to fruition, with B2B being more invested in across the industry, I think the sellers themselves want more of that functionality, want more ease of use. They want to be able to automate as much as possible and make things easier for themselves. Um, so the next question, and this is a question that we've gotten quite a bit, I think, since we've started this B2B functionality, is why is it only for Shopify Plus? Why Shopify in specific? And I think there's a couple answers to that question. Ultimately, and I've talked about this in previous Webgility customer webinars. Um, we generally, when we're talking about adding things to our product roadmap at Webgility, things that we're going to develop out further, it usually comes down to how many people are asking us for this sort of thing. How many customers are approaching us saying, hey, why doesn't this work this way? Or why don't we have this feature? That is generally a good indicator for us that we need to start investing in things. Obviously, we do market research and we tend to see what's popular and what needs to be built out more. But the bottom line is a majority of our customers use Shopify. Shopify is one of the, if not the largest online store outside of marketplaces that people use. So it makes sense for us to sort of double click on Shopify, at least from a starting point, right? They also have Shopify Plus specifically, which is geared directly towards B2B sellers. So with that offering, it gives us easy access to be able to develop something directly for Shopify Plus. BigCommerce has a similar situation where they offer B2B capability directly within BigCommerce, and we have some basic capabilities for B2B on BigCommerce as well. But those are the two starting points basically for us from a B2B perspective. That doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to build them out, but if you're wondering why Shopify Plus, that is the reason why. A little bit more about Shopify Plus. The reason why you would even purchase it, because I know it can be a little expensive for some businesses. It gives you segmented pricing for your company profiles. You can add payment terms, POs, and draft orders, and have finer order management for B2B. And then you can customize your storefront specifically for buyers. And those are, I think, the high points. But ultimately, and this is why Webgility comes into the equation, is that Shopify's native connectors, their built-in e-commerce connectors, basically what Webgility does, they don't offer the capability of pulling orders the same way that they do for B2C. So Webgility kind of has a unique offering here where we can do the same thing that we do for B2C for B2B users and pull those orders in and make it easier for you. So I know that was sort of a long novel of an explanation, but I wanted to set the stage for why we're focusing so much on B2B. And I think now is a good time to jump into the demo. David can show essentially what Webgility can do from a B2B perspective, the buttons to push and the knobs to turn and everything like that. It's pretty straightforward, but some of the, I guess, the buttons that you are going to be looking for might not stand out to you outside of us pointing them out directly in this context. So I'll relinquish control of my screen and you can take it from here, David.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Hello. Let's see if we can get the right screen shared here. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen there, John.
Yep, you are good.
Okay. So I know we're going to jump into all this, B2B stuff. We have a couple of terms here. We have B2B, we have B2C, we have D2C. Those are three terms that are thrown around here a bit. You'll see them on our settings here too. B2B, business to business. B2C, business to consumer. D2C is direct to consumer. So those are acronyms that people are using for this, and you'll see us using them. So I'm going to go in here. This is Webgility. When we connect stores to Webgility, this is just a quick overview in case somebody hasn't really been introduced to our Webgility Online. But you can see the stores that are connected here. And of course, one we're working with right now is the Shopify B2B. We have the orders that come in from the online store here. They show up in this kind of inbox of orders and refunds. And then we have products We have a product catalog. So that is where we kind of connect between the products on the website to the products in your accounting, in this case, QBO. And you would see how your products are matched. You want to make sure that the ones that you're currently selling on the website are matched or mapped to the products in your accounting. Once all of that is done, we can sync inventory numbers back and forth. We can, do a lot more management there of the products. So in the connection screen, I want to kind of quickly explain, we do connect QuickBooks, the stores. We also connect the gateways and shipping. So Shipping Easy, ShipStation, if we connect those, we can get the shipping fees. Payment gateways, like if you have, different payment providers or some that we connect directly to, and we can fetch the fee with the order. It helps get that information into your accounting. Then we also have the settings down here, which is what we're going to be going over today, kind of showing how we have the B2B settings for Shopify Plus. So the last thing we have with Webgility Online is our sync, our automation, which is setting up, and once everything's set up in Webgility, then you turn on the automation and it starts managing the download and posting of those orders automatically. So that's kind of a quick outline of Webgility. So let's see, the key here is in the past before Webgility, and I would see a lot of customers take and do B2B orders in QuickBooks. They would have their teams working in QuickBooks directly for B2B orders. And then they got online stores and they started connecting their consumer stores to Webgility, and still doing B2B manually in a way, but we're seeing B2B grow, like John was mentioning. So the B2B gets to the point where it's hard to manage manually, and that's why you want to have it integrated so that those B2B orders can even grow more, because you're not spending so much time on them and you can focus on other aspects of the business.
Yeah, and I think these new features sort of thrive in an environment where you do both B2B and B2C, right? Because if you're if you're pulling everything in B2B, there's a good chance that you can just sort of work this as normal. But when you have both B2C and B2B orders, that's when you start to run into issues of like having to do two different workflows for two different types of orders. And as David will show, I think some of these features make that painfully easy, right? To be able to
Yeah.
differentiate and kind of post things differently.
Yeah, and that's the key. It was, we originally mostly saw just consumer websites. You're selling to a consumer, and people would then need B2B, and we can break out payment methods here. I had it later in my discussion, but I'll bring it out now, is you can still do a little bit of separation between B2B orders and B2C orders, just by separating out like payment types or payment methods. You can kind of give a little separation of those type of orders. Maybe a B2B is an invoice and a B2C is a sales receipt. So you can separate them out a little bit, but to be able to get, all the necessary information and features for B2B, that's where, the Shopify Plus and the B2B features that I'm going to show here really help. So you can see here, I've got it separated out by uh, different rules here for the transaction. We have order type, so that gives us the B2B, and it gives us the direct to consumer. As I was saying, it's basically the same as B2C. So on the B2B here, there's going to be some new settings if you have Shopify Plus on there. One of the first settings is you can set up terms in Shopify for your B2B customers. You can set up terms for your B2B customers in QuickBooks. Now, QuickBooks B2B terms, payment terms, don't really connect to Shopify payment terms, that you set up for your customers in Shopify Plus. But here's where we fix that. We can go in and map those. So you'll see two columns here. One is the sales channel, Shopify, and one is QuickBooks. So what you're doing is basically mapping the payment terms. So if there's a net 30, you can map a net 30. So that way, when the order comes in and you've matched the company name to the company name in QuickBooks, the company name in Shopify to the company name in QuickBooks, then those terms can be passed along and flow properly into your accounting. So here's another setting that we have for B2B, and that is record the payment. So we can receive each payment from the sales channel. So say it comes in as an open invoice, then later you get a payment, the customer goes in and makes a payment, that can be synced to your QuickBooks to record that payment. That's the second part of the B2B settings. The third part here on B2B settings is um, you can go in and record the purchase order number. Now this is important. We're now pointing the PO number to QuickBooks so you can track that better. It's not just an order number, it's the actual PO number from the B2B. We also can take on the B2B settings and sync the payment back to Shopify. Now, this is if you receive more, you have an open invoice and you're in QBO and you receive payment in your QuickBooks and mark it as paid, it's going to go up to the website and mark that order as paid now in Shopify. This is a two-way sync on the payment status. So that's not something that you have on a B2C. It's basically a one-way ticket coming once the order's paid or shipped. You pick those statuses to download and post into QuickBooks. Webgility does have some settings that allow you to do updates, order updates. The order updates actually work with this too, because when the payment comes in, it's going to show in the order updates in the orders here. So some of these settings that I'm showing in the order settings, you'll see some differences here. So what we have here is we have PO numbers, if you look over here on the right, and then you also have like the company name. So that gives us the ability for company name and PO on those orders. Now, if you post an order into QuickBooks, so this is order information here. And hopefully I'm not going too fast, but I know we have a lot of stuff to cover here before we get to questions, and the questions are important too. So here's the order information that we get, and you want to get the order information, you want to get refund information, you want to get fee information if there are any fees. All that stuff needs to go into your accounting so that you can properly reconcile. So in the B2B setup, we will go in and make sure that these are all turned on, like PO number, company name, that kind of stuff, if you have B2B, so that will match. Once an order is posted, you can actually see it in the website. So you can view the order in Shopify just by clicking on that icon. And this is the B2B order. The difference with B2B in Shopify and B2C is in Shopify, you can see here we have a PO number for B2B. We also have, and this is Shopify Plus, we also have the customer information, but on top of that, we also have company information now. So that is really important for B2B. If we go back to Webgility and look at QuickBooks after this order was posted, we can look at that invoice. And yesterday, QuickBooks was really slow for a few of the customers I was working with, so hopefully it speeds up a little bit today.
That's my experience generally.
So here's the invoice. And if I just go down a little bit, you can see here, we have a PO number now. So we've actually mapped that to the PO number field. We do have help docs on this for setup, but anytime, if you are a Webgility customer currently, we can go in and have you ask us for help. We'll set up a session. We'll get you configured for B2B if that's what your needs are. But as you can see here, now we put all that information into QuickBooks so that you can track it properly with the PO number. The other part of B2B in the settings for Webgility is the customer matching. So the customer matching is the hardest part if you don't have, um, any way of separating out for B2B with like a Shopify Plus. Shopify Plus doesn't give you a company name field unless you go to Shopify Plus. So it's people kind of skirt that a little bit if they need to conserve money and their B2B orders aren't big enough yet. We separate out the best we can. You put the company name in on the name field, but if you are Shopify Plus, you are doing higher volume on B2B, this gets really important because we can then map all this B2B information into your accounting and make it so that you can spend time doing other things than just trying to get it into your accounting properly. So when we go to the orders, you saw the main order differences there. On the customers, we have differences there too. And what we have here is here's the regular customer name matching. So this would be your D2C or B2C, your consumer matching. So you can go down and now you have your B2B customer matching. And you can see down here, you have company and customer name. So this allows you to match your B2B, but it does require the Shopify B2B add-on, which is in Shopify Plus. So you'll see these little crowns, these little golden crowns here. Those are the features that Shopify Plus B2B specifically shows in Webgility. And I'll show those down over here too. So let me hit the B2B. So here you see the crown. You see the crown down here, and you see the crown down here. So those are the 3 items there. And then under customers, you've got the B2B matching for the customers. We do have, um, you know, single payment, and then we can also do individual payments for the B2B. There are some customers that run their B2B and the business actually pays the whole thing online when they make their B2B order. I do see that, not as often, but I do see customers do that where they have their business to business customers actually make the payment up front. But the more common is to have terms and have payments after that. But like I said, now we can sync that payment to QuickBooks, and we can also have you make the payment in QuickBooks or mark the order paid in QuickBooks and sync that back to Shopify. When those payment updates happen, then you would see them here in this updates column and be able to act on those.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I think I just kind of went right through all of those
Yeah, I
features.
mean it's
So
it's pretty straightforward ultimately, right? Like the core functionality of WebGility is to pull in order information and, automate manual work out. And I think it doesn't take much for B2B to kind of be automated in the same way. It's just a couple different things here and there, right? Like the customer information being company information or using PO numbers instead of sales receipts. So there's just those little nuances that B2B requires, and I think it doesn't it's not super complicated. It's important for us to go through and kind of point out where all those little things are inside of WebGility so that people
yeah,
understand how to
and you
use
could
them.
and you can see the difference here. Here's a regular Shopify. There's no PO number up here. There's no business or company name down here that we can map to.
Mhm.
So, people do find ways around getting the Shopify Plus and that, but once you start getting uh, enough order volume that you're spending a lot of time with your B2B orders, then
It's worth
definitely
it.
it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it
Yeah.
to get that information and that automation back and forth and into your accounting and back to your Shopify. So makes
Yeah.
it much better. You have less errors. You don't have orders that you miss or been sitting there for a while. Um, they're just getting taken care of properly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a very similar conversation to what we hear a lot at Webgility when people opt for one of the free connectors that Shopify or Intuit has that,
Oh,
you know, does
don't get me started on the free connectors.
they do
I,
what Webgility does, but it's to a much lesser degree, a lot less fidelity, a lot less, it's not as comprehensive as what Webgility does when
yeah,
it's at its best and when you have everything set up. So yeah, the way to look at it, because I know we get a lot of comments about Shopify Plus being sort of pricey, and it definitely is. It's a step up from a regular Shopify plan, definitely. And it could be that it's not worth it for you until you start to get a lot of B2B orders, and in which case, if you're trying to sort of as David was alluding to, kind of work around using Shopify Plus for B2B, there are ways to do that. There are ways that you can post your transactions separately and kind of keep them
yeah,
separate with company
very,
information in the
very
customer name.
limited, very
Yeah, and
limited.
it's tedious. That's the other part is that you're sort of half automating at that point. But again, once you get to a certain point where you feel that you can justify, having that extra add-on and kind of automating away all that extra work, that's when it becomes a lot more worth it, right? So
Yep, yep. I was laughing about the other methods of getting stuff into QuickBooks. Webgility, one of the things that I like about this is, we have our own, you know, support teams that are like right here in our software. You can click on it, you can get help right away. You can get another session with somebody like me or one of our other implementation specialists. You have full, and we respond. Um, we're not trying to hide our support. We're trying to make sure that you get the best out of our product. So we're always going to support our product if you're a customer. Um, the things that Webgility does different than, and this, not to get too much advertising spiel here, but this is what I hear from customers. So, it's like they can't see what the error was. Something's not working or they're missing orders and they have no idea how to fix it. And they contact this, you know, other connectors support and they wait 2 weeks and they still don't have any resolve for it. The Webgility team is very responsive. We want to make sure that you're continually getting the best usage out of our product. It's very visible. If there is an error, these errors are going to show up and, alert you right away. We've got information on errors, so we can track that error down, get it fixed as quickly as possible. This
yeah,
software is connected. We have like all these different stores and marketplaces we connect to. So they are moving targets. They always are updating. It's kind of like your phone or your computer. You're always getting software updates. Well, WebGility is doing the same thing. And as to John mentioning how, WebGility is building these B2B features in, we're going to be building more. This isn't just the only one. We will be working on more B2B features and B2B as we kind of build this part of our business out more. So the features that you see here, we'll probably be modifying those. We'll be adding more to others channels. So the future is not set in stone. It's a moving target, and WebGility kind of moves with that. And
yeah.
that's one of the good parts of WebGility is actually the visibility of what's going on. Yes, we do have automation, but you can see what's going on. And then we have good support and help. So
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I know you mentioned errors. A good thing to point out here is that when you do get an error code, because they all should generally have an error code associated with them when there is an error, just go to our help center and put that error code in the search bar. We have help docs for almost all, if not every single error code that we have, and exactly what causes it and how to fix it. So generally if there's an error code associated with it, it's, I don't want to say an easy fix, but the documentation is there for you to use. And if you are having trouble with it, again, to David's point, we have that support team that is always here to help. And I feel like this is a good time as well to kind of reiterate that we also have this customer advisory panel that we started. I know we've got a lot of people that signed up, and the overall purpose of the advisory panel is for us to get feedback from you on exactly what you are looking to see from Webgility, from a usability standpoint, integrations, whatever new features you want to see. that is the best way to get that information to us. We have in the past done like we've had forums where you give us suggestions for what you want to see in the future from the product, and that works as well. But if you are looking to like get more one-on-one time with our team, sign up for the customer advisory panel. You get paid for your time of working with us, being that beta tester, and you can kind of tell us exactly what you want to see. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to implement every single little thing that maybe you give us advice on, but it does give you guys a voice. It allows us to see what's important to you guys. And like I said, getting paid for your time is definitely not a bad thing. We obviously want to make sure that it's worth it for you guys. Um, but yeah, I feel like now's a good time to get into the Q&A, or did you want to go over sort of the automation stuff towards
Yeah,
the end?
so basically, what we do with Webgility is we go in and we configure for your workflow. It isn't just one button setting. It isn't, everybody does their accounting in the same manner. I started working for Webgility almost 7 years ago, and I'm being told, hey, you set up Webgility this way, and this is how accounting works. And over the years, I've found many different paths of information getting into accounting and how people are doing their accounting. B2B is one. You do a little bit different path for B2B than you would, consumer. So everybody does their accounting a little bit differently because their companies are all different. But they get the same result. The information has to get into accounting. So we go through, we configure this to your workflow. We configure it the closest we can get to match how you've been doing business. We may need to consult a little bit with you on some standard process that need to happen that you weren't thinking about, like maybe the fee posting and some other things that need to be included in there to make things easier for reconciliation. You do have to do the final reconciliation. We do get all the information into QuickBooks. We do help with that reconciliation, but there is that last step with an eyeball on it. And John, you always go over this part about the reconciliation. Um, but it is something that has to happen where you want to be able to, check that everything's coming out right, and manage that. The once we've done all the setup and we've tested the orders, even when we're testing orders, we can post an order into accounting. We can take that order and unpost it. So people are always like, oh, we're configuring it, we're connecting it, and they're like, is it putting stuff in my QuickBooks? No, we have control over that. When we're doing the configuration, we control what goes in there. When something does get posted into QuickBooks, we have control of saying, hey, I want to take this and unpost it. So down here in the bottom left, you see an unpost. We can pull that back out of QuickBooks. So once we've tested everything, everything's working for your store channels, your B2B, then we go down to the automation down here and we set up the automation. So once the automation is turned on and working, we have frequency, nightly or 15 minutes, depending on your account. And then we have all these settings: automate the order posting, automate the quantity posting. So there's a lot of settings we have in here. It's all customizable for your what you want to do. Um, Product syncing. We don't sync products automatically. We sync the the price and the quantity. We can transfer some costs on some sites, but the refunds, the fees, all that kind of stuff can be automated into your accounting software. We can also have it so when you receive quantity into your QuickBooks, we can send that quantity back to your Shopify or your other websites that you have. So that way you're controlling and managing your inventory and your accounting and going out to multiple different stores. Like if I have all these stores here set up, I now can manage my inventory on all those. I sell 10 products on BigCommerce. It's going to reduce all the inventory on my other stores to reflect that. So that way the inventory is managed. But like I said, once the B2B is all set up and your B2C is all set up and everything's tested, we go in and turn on the automation.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah, it's important to note that this is generally what we suggest as the last and final step of setting up Webgility, because you don't want to turn on automation, turn on the fire hose, so to speak, without making sure that everything is set up as you'd like. Everything is, reversible for the most part when it comes to how we post orders, especially even with the automation. But it can get a lot harder to tell what's going on if you have automation turned on and haven't tested things, and maybe it goes and posts 100 orders. It's a lot more tedious to undo 100 orders than it is just to make sure everything's set up correctly before you turn on the automation. So always important to point that out.
yeah. So, basically, if you're doing both B2B and B2C, and people say, well, Shopify Plus is too expensive to do B2B. I've heard that a few times, but if you're doing any volume of B2B, definitely, go with the Shopify Plus with the B2B settings. The other thing I see people do is they'll do one website just for their B2B orders and one website for their, direct to consumer or B2C orders. And they think they're getting the best of both worlds, because they're keeping them separate and they're easily manageable that way. Well, yeah, but it's still a cost. It's a cost in time to manage two websites now than one
Yeah.
website. That takes a lot more
Yeah,
time.
you've got hosting
Um,
costs, domain
yeah,
costs,
uh,
maintenance, stuff like that.
r-
It ends up probably
yeah.
being a lot more than it would just to pay for Shopify Plus, I would
Yeah, if
assume.
you sit and the time involved to keep those two websites in court instead of just one website, it all kind of adds up and it makes it easier to to have issues and spend more money than you think you really need to on
Yeah.
keeping those together. So,
I always like to
that's
use
what
the
that's why
term
you do
cognitive
this.
burden here, right? Like even if let's just say you're getting a deal on your hosting, you're getting a deal on your domain, it's not costing you a whole lot of extra money to do it that way where you have everything on separate websites. You're still there's the cognitive burden of having to go in and manage two separate sites, having to go in and make sure on your end that everything is as separate as possible. When in reality, it could just be a whole lot easier for you to purchase the add-on on Shopify Plus, have everything segmented automatically for you with Webgility so that everything is kept separate without you having to go and manage a whole lot of extra things. So
Yep, yep. And I think when we're looking at our questions, if there's something I went over and I went over it a little bit too fast or something, and you want me to kind of just mention it again, just reach out in the comments there, and I'll point out the area again if you want to see it again. But mainly the differences with the B2B is that in the sales area, when the sales download, we can see the purchase order number, we can see the business name, the company name. Same thing in the order settings is we can now separate out your consumer orders and your B2B orders, separately and put in the B2B features that match what Shopify has. So
yeah,
on the
and post
B2B
them
here,
like
yeah,
completely differently, right?
and post them differently. Yeah, the
Yeah,
payment terms, the be able to take the payments from Shopify and post those into QuickBooks after the fact
yeah.
as payments are added in Shopify or
Even sending them just like with the basic settings, sending them to different deposit to accounts,
mhm,
everything that you can set for your normal order posting will be kept separate from B2B or B2C. So you can
yeah,
tailor the entire experience based on how you want those orders to
yeah.
post.
And then, being able to send the Shopify or QuickBooks payments. So if somebody sends you a check, then you can mark it as paid. It'll go up and mark it as paid in Shopify. And then also, making sure that we can post that purchase order number into QuickBooks. So there's a couple of different settings there. You do have to sometimes, if you don't have it in an invoice template in QBO, you have to turn on that you can see a PO number, and then we can select that field to post the PO number. The last part is the customer matching. We can now match not only the customer name like you would on B2C customers in Shopify, but on the B2B customers, we now have the company name. We can match the B2B company name to the customer name field in accounting. That way that you're matching up your terms, you're matching up your customers. You're not going into QuickBooks and merging customers all the time because now a B2B customer came in and it wasn't matched properly. So yeah, I think we're
Perfect.
good for questions at this point. What do
Uh,
you think, John?
yeah, and we got one right in time. Cheryl asked, "What if we mark the orders as paid via manual payment method in order to send them to our 3PL for fulfillment, but the customer is actually on 60-day terms in QBO?" Um, I guess just to make sure I understand the question, are you asking if that would be a problem to do that? I mean, it's definitely a manual workflow because you're marking them as manual and then you're having to track that 60-day term separately in QBO. Ideally, you would want to set up the payment terms using a B2B function like this so that it carries that 60-day term directly into QBO from Shopify. But I don't necessarily see a problem with how you're doing it as long as you're fine keeping track of it manually like that,
Yeah,
if that
and
makes sense.
the whole part with the B2B is it makes it easier for that because if you have an open invoice and you have payments going to that invoice, it's not going to be marked as completed until the payment is completed to the amount on that invoice.
Mhm.
And either whether it gets paid in, you mark it that amount in QBO or you mark that amount in Shopify, it's going to transfer that information accordingly. So if you're not doing a B2B setup, with Shopify Plus, then yeah, there is more manual work on tracking those things. You would bring it in as an open invoice. You'd have to make sure that it matches a customer name that you have in Shopify that's a B2B customer. You'd have to then kind of manually track the terms and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
there are, that's what I was saying is typically people would then split out your B2B as an invoice, so it's an open invoice, and your B2C orders payment method would be something paid. So it would be probably a sales receipt for your B2C and a invoice for your B2B. You do that with the Shopify Plus, but there's a lot more to it as we've been showing.
Yeah, so I think bottom line, if that's working for you, I think that that's fine. I would just maybe try to track the amount of work that you're doing manually on that to see if it might be worth it, honestly, to just kind of upgrade the process and make it automated. In my personal opinion, it sounds like a potential nightmare if things don't like get tracked consistently. But if you have a process in place for doing it manually through Shopify and then tracking the terms manually in QBO, I think that's perfectly fine. It just depends on how much time you're spending
Yeah.
on it and if you're happy spending that much time
And
on it.
and and you would have to jump from QBO in that respect to go back up to Shopify and make, post that, an amount was paid,
Yeah.
for that. And you'd have to manually set that in Shopify too.
I could see that working for like a small amount of B2B orders. Like if you don't have, we'll just throw out a random number, but if like you don't have 100 orders, B2B orders a week, I could see that being a perfectly fine process. But at some point, I think if your plan is to grow your B2B orders and have a scalable process, that could get really really out of hand really quickly. So that's the only observation that I have, just not knowing everything about your business. But yeah, that was a good question either way.
And and one of the things here is, the reason there's a B2B in Shopify Plus and the reason Shopify actually made this, it wasn't something that's been around forever. Shopify added this to their Shopify. And the reason they added it is because everybody got online, e-commerce sites. They were doing their B2B manually out of their accounting. Um, that gets just cumbersome. You have to have people managing those B2B orders manually in your accounting. And it makes sense that if you have an online e-commerce store to have your business to business logging into their account and ordering off of a e-commerce store too. So, it just makes sense to do it that way. The old-fashioned way, like I said, you would do it in, and I say old-fashioned, but it's just what I used to see before these features were available. Is people manually doing it in QuickBooks, people separating out two separate websites, which becomes more management of online stores and accounts and all that kind of stuff in a website. So now this brings that together, makes it more efficient, makes it so that you're not spending so much time, you don't have so much overhead. cost, and it works. It's really nice.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah, if we have any other questions, now would be the time to ask them. I know today's webinar was a little more, I guess, straightforward, less about like an accounting workflow, stuff like that, more generally about the newer features that we have in Webgility. So if you do have any questions, again, ask them away. Even if they don't relate to the B2B stuff, I think it's perfectly fine for us to answer questions outside of that. Um, and if there are no questions, thanks again for attending, Cheryl. Appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day. If there are no other questions, we can end early. I know we're technically at time. Usually we end up pushing this for an hour just to make sure everybody has time to answer questions, but I have no problem giving time back to people's day. Another 15 minutes never hurt anybody. Give it a couple seconds just in case somebody does have a question. And just to kind of remind everybody, after I end the webinar, so once I click the big red button that terminates the webinar, you guys should get a survey that asks you what you'd like to see from these webinars going forward. We know that some of them are going to be more important to some customers than other customers, but if you have specific things that you want to see us talk about, workflows that you want to see us cover, anything like that, just let us know. These webinars are specifically made for you guys, so we want to make sure that you guys are getting the maximum benefit. We're answering all the questions that you have, and take it from there.
And I think we should mention, just for like the coming up couple of webinars we have, John, you're going on a vacation, right?
Good point out. Yeah, so I will send out the schedule for upcoming webinars. Full disclosure, the next Webgility Online focus webinar will not be until uh, basically a month from now. So June 25th. Right? That sounds right. Yeah, because the next one that we're doing is on June 18th for Webgility Desktop. So I'm taking a vacation. I'll be in New York if anybody in here is in New York. But yeah, just look out for the next email. It'll communicate what the next topic is going to be. It'll be on June 25th. So there'll be a little bit of a hiatus for these webinars. Um, but yeah, the recording for this webinar will be sent out tomorrow. If you need a recap on it, I'll also include a link to the help document for the B2B capabilities on Webgility Online. But I appreciate you guys all joining. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Again, we're happy to help you guys however we can. Amy, I will have somebody, it might be David, reach out to you so that we can get a session scheduled and answer any questions that you have. Yeah, we're happy to work with you guys.